I think the touchscreen and the devices it gave rise to, in particular the iPhone and its big brother, the iPad, will go down in history as one of the most important inventions of all time, right up there alongside the wheel. But that does present a bit of a problem for Apple, because once you've invented the wheel, where do you go from there? I mean, you can make it out of lighter materials or with a few more or a few less spokes, but let's face it, the wheel was always going to be a bit of a one-trick pony. And there's another problem, which is that the technology used in these things is so cutting edge that each year the improvements get smaller and smaller. A bit like Formula One cars, you're talking about huge amounts of research and development to shave just fractions of a second off the lap time. That makes things pretty challenging for the marketing team at Apple, which each year has to persuade us to upgrade to the very latest model. And how do they do that when this year's browser is still a browser, and the camera is still a camera, and the telephone is still essentially the same thing that Sir Alexander Graham Bell invented in 1876? I think the answer is that as Apple develops each new phone, there's another team in its R&D department working on how the company can squeeze more superlatives into each launch presentation.
All new, incredibly powerful, amazing, indispensable, most popular, powerful, breakthrough, most exciting, world-class, incredible, best possible.
The incredible, most exciting, unprecedented, fastest, massive, amazing, excited, incredibly fastest, exciting.
My God, Hans, you need to calm down. Any more excitement and I fear you might implode like a collapsing star and suck us all into a black hole of exhilaration. Let's see if Apple can field anyone who's a bit calmer.
Simply stunning. Amazing. Stunning. Gorgeous.
Oh, that's more like it.
Impeccable. Amazing. Fantastic. Incredible. Cutting edge. Breakthrough. Best possible.
Then again.
Faster, world-class, advanced, smarter, impressive, best possible.
Fastest chip ever.
Fastest, faster. Dramatically increased faster. Astounding faster. Dramatic.
Faster.
Insanely powerful iPhone 12.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow indeed. And here it is. This is the bog standard iPhone 12. Nevertheless, and although Apple only hinted at it, I'm expecting it to be quite fast. Now, alongside the iPhone 12, I also have my daughter's cracked iPhone 7, my own cracked iPhone 8, and my wife's not yet cracked iPhone XR. And later in this film, we'll be joined by the iPhone Pro Max when it arrives. Now the question is, if you look beyond the dizzying hyperbole, how good is the new 12 and should you upgrade? Well, the first thing that Apple talked about in this year's launch is 5G. 5G telephone signals can transmit mobile data between 3 and 10 times faster than 4G, and it'll get even quicker with time. So ultimately, you'll be able to download and upload films in seconds. But there's a huge problem with 5G. Actually, come to think of it, there are two, depending on just how unhinged you are. If you're completely David Icke, then 5G doesn't just transmit data, but contrary to all the known laws of physics and biology, it transmits coronavirus too. For sane people, on the other hand, the bigger problem is this. This is EE's current 5G UK coverage map. Those yellow bits represent areas of 5G coverage. So if, like me, you live in the countryside and you're still waiting for a mobile phone signal at your house, let alone a 5G one, it's all slightly pointless. After all, I can count the number of times each year that I find myself visiting a city and wanting to download a film on the fingers of one foot. So what else? Well, this year's iPhone has a slightly brighter, slightly stronger screen with slightly better contrast, slightly better battery life, slightly different design, a slightly faster chip, and a slightly different way of charging. Are these reasons to upgrade, even from an iPhone 7? Probably not. Sit these things side by side and watch BBC iPlayer, and other than the screen size, you'd really struggle to tell the difference. As for the faster chip, sure, It feels a bit nippier, but if you're just reading emails, making calls and browsing, the difference is negligible, even between the 7 and the 12. No, it all really hinges on one thing, and that's the camera. It's a cliche, but the nevertheless true saying that the best camera you can ever have is the one you have with you. And the one thing that most people have with them most of the time is not an SLR, but a mobile phone. The problem with mobile phone cameras, though, has always been their size. They have to have much smaller sensors and much smaller lenses than cameras, and that's meant a big trade-off in picture quality. You really notice that, especially with photographs taken in low light, where the smaller sensor in a mobile phone struggles to gather enough light to make a decent image. Mobile phones also struggle with zoomed-in shots because you can't fit a proper telephoto lens on a mobile phone, and because the more telephoto the lens, the less light they let in. For both these reasons, I haven't taken that many photographs with my old iPhone 8 or any of the iPhones which preceded it. But then last year, when we went on holiday, remember what they were? I found myself borrowing my wife's XR because the photos were so much better than my 8. And I guess that kind of gives away my answer to the question of whether you should upgrade from an iPhone 7 or 8. If you enjoy taking photographs and can afford it, then yes, unquestionably. But how much of a difference will it make? To answer that question, I took a series of photographs with the 7, the 8, the XR and the 12. One in low light, one to compare the zoom capabilities of each phone, and I also shot some video. Now I just need to wait until my iPhone 12 Pro Max arrives. Here we go! My new iPhone 12 Pro Max arrived by courier. A week after the case actually, which Apple was also kind enough to send by courier. And yet another courier will be delivering the charger in a few days' time. So much for Apple's green credentials, but let's not dwell on that one. By the way, whilst I was waiting for my new iPhone, I also upgraded a few of the things I used to film these reviews. So if the second half of the film looks a little bit different to the first, that's why. So first things first, let's address the elephant in the room about the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is, of course, its size. Is it just too big? That does rather depend on a couple of things. If you're upgrading from an XR or another Max model, you probably won't notice the difference. It is, after all, only a few millimeters bigger than each of those. But if, like me, you're upgrading from an 8, then you really will notice the difference. And whether or not it bothers you is going to depend on whether you look at this thing as a huge telephone that happens to take photographs or a small camera that also makes calls. I'm happy with the latter. Now I'll come back to the Pro Max a little bit later, but before I do, let's take a quick look at the picture quality of the base model compared with previous iPhones. For that, I got my daughter to take a photo of me with the 7, then the 8, the XR and the 12. All by the light of a single candle, because that's the most demanding scenario for the small sensors found in smartphones. As you can see, there's a huge jump from the 7 to the 8, and then another very big one up to the XR, and then a smaller but still very noticeable jump from the XR to the 12. Now, in order to show the difference on YouTube, I've had to zoom in on one part of the photograph. But even when you zoom out and look at the whole photograph on a small screen, you can really see the difference. The quality on the 7 is so bad I'd never have kept it. The one on the 12, on the other hand, well, that's starting to snap at the heels of a proper camera. And that's remarkable when you think it was taken by the light of one candle. Now, unfortunately, I had to give the 12 back to its owner before my Pro Max arrived. So I can't do a direct comparison between the two. So how else can I compare them? Well, Apple says that the camera sensor behind the wide lens in the Pro Max is 47% bigger than the one in the Pro model, which means it'll take 87% better photographs in low light. What is an 87% better picture, I wonder? Will it give me 87% fewer chins? Or will it make my bald patch appear 87% smaller in low light? Obviously not. Presumably, it means the Pro Max wide camera is 87% better in low light than the one in the Pro. That in turn uses a bigger, better sensor than the ultrawide, which is common to both cameras. So if I compare a picture taken with the wide, it should be more than 87% better than the ultrawide camera. Here's the one taken with the wide, and here's one taken with the ultrawide. Now, although it may be less obvious on YouTube, I can see that the wide camera is considerably less grainy. More than 87% less? Actually, I think it probably is, which makes me think that Apple's claim for the Pro Max over the Pro is probably right. The next thing you get with the Pro Max model is a 65mm telephoto lens. For anyone not familiar with focal lengths, the bigger the number, the closer the subject of your photograph appears to be, or the further away you can stand. For context, professional photographers tend to use an 85mm lens for portraiture. The normal wide-angle lens on most iPhones is around 26mm, and the telephoto on the Plus and Pro models is around 50mm. So the 65mm lens in the Pro Max is a significant step forwards towards the ideal 85mm portraiture lens. It'll give you more flexibility composing your shot and means you can get better portraits without accidentally pushing the camera right up someone's left nostril. With the Pro Max, you obviously get a bigger screen to compose your shots on, and that does make a difference. You can see what's in focus far better, and you're much more likely to spot if someone in the back row is picking their nose. Now, there are a few other things I haven't mentioned about the Pro Max, like better low-light autofocus and better image stabilization. The problem is that, like a better lens or a better sensor and a better screen, none of these things individually is going to transform each and every photograph you take. Cumulatively, though, I think they'll make a noticeable difference to the overall standard of your photography. Or in other words, where what came out of an iPhone 7 barely deserved to be called a photograph, the 12, on the other hand, is good enough to be the camera I use for day-to-day stuff and holiday snaps. And to my mind, the Pro Max is at least another 20% better than that overall. The iPhone 12 is very impressive as a video camera too, with similar improvements in the quality of the footage as you see with photographs. Here's some footage I shot of our chickens. That's Pip on the right and Nugget on the left. The quality isn't going to be as good on YouTube, but when watched on the new OLED screen on the iPhone, it's so clear. It almost feels like you're looking through a window. How useful a video camera is for most people, I'm never quite sure. Have people's filming and editing skills really progressed much since the 60s? I mean, even if you'd filmed something like this home movie in Dolby Vision, nobody's going to want to sit through 30 minutes of it. I would have shot myself after 5. Now, if you're sold on the Pro Max as a camera with a telephone rather than the other way around, you're probably sold already. But if you sit on the fence, there's one other thing about the Max that might just swing it for you. It's the battery life. In its own tests, Apple got nearly 20% more life out of the Pro Max than the 12. Now, given that running out of battery is probably the biggest irritation with all mobile phones, I think 20% is really worth having. So there we have it. In answer to the original question, how good is this phone? I'd have to take a few words out of Tim Cook's lexicon and say, wow, it's amazing. Actually, it is. Is it worth upgrading? And if so, from which model? Well, if you're someone who just uses a phone as a phone, like my mum, then there's no reason to upgrade. Ever. If, on the other hand, you enjoy taking photographs, then I think it's worth upgrading from an XR or earlier because you'll see enough of a difference to feel like you really got your money's worth. And some. And which model? Well, again, it depends on how much you enjoy photography. I came at this as an iPhone 8 owner, thinking I'd like the Pro Max, but I'm not at all sure if I could put up with the size of the thing, just for a slightly longer lens and a slightly better sensor. In fact, I thought I might return it to Apple and swap it for the smaller Pro model after I'd finished reviewing it. But no, I won over. I want the longer lens, the better sensor and the battery life, so I'm keeping it. If you know anyone else who's trying to decide whether to upgrade, do share this film with them. Otherwise, till the next time, I've been Arlo Guthrie. Bye bye.